Well, hello, that's me again. Today is December 26th. It's the day after Christmas, and let me talk a little bit about events which are happening right now. And as always, I will try to make it extremely hard to understand for you because I will try to use mathematics. But this is the only way to explain things, and obviously, you have to understand me and my blog. We constantly live under all kinds of assault by trolls and all kinds of the psyops people. So I have sometimes to react to just clean up basically operation. And but here it is. We will start with the obviously such things which basically testify to the fact of what I'm talking about nonstop, and we will start with the program article about the great strategies, the prognosticator of prognosticators, and this basically the head of the Kagan mafia, which runs basically foreign policy of the United States. It's Mr. Robert Kagan, who is by education political scientist and historian. That means basically the guy is not really educated. He is basically went through the diploma mill basically of the Ivy League schools in the United States, and here it's about using the one of the founders of the United States, what when people ask what basically you gave us fathers, and they said we gave you a republic if you can keep it. So he writes about a free world if you can keep it, and I don't have to go through this molasses of the bullshit and absolute ignorance on the issues of war, which is basically characteristic of Kagan. But this is what is this all about. We have people and this Neocon mafia basically trying to present some kind of put the good face on what is happening, and obviously it's not happening as they planned. Their scenario immediately went bonkers and completely broken, and this is what my job is actually, and I'm working on the fourth book. And when people ask what I really do for living in terms of apart from doing the presentations by videos, I write books and I warn in them. But here's the problem. This is the same as actually Mr. Medvedev today speaks, or Mr. Lavrov yesterday, that the West is not rational. You cannot trust them. You cannot basically assume that they are rational, because for a simple reason. If they would have known what they were getting themselves into, they wouldn't have done it. That was my principle, my assumption too at some point of time, before I said, hey guys, let me warn you, you don't know what you're dealing with. But you know what, obviously Mr. Kagan and his, wife, Victoria, fuck the EU, Nuland, they know better, indeed, what do I know? And they continue to drive the United States into the ground, and obviously right now we can say absolutely clearly that the United States and Western Europe are isolated. But to show you the degree that imbecility of the general political and economic elite of the combined West, be that in the United States or in Europe, here's the very fascinating piece of rhetoric from Mr. I believe Timmermans, who basically stated that if you read what he's talking about, Mr. Timmermans, he says that top EU official, obviously that's him, Putin has already lost, just like Hitler in 1943. Russia has become a complete outcast in the international stage. Franz Timmermans, a vice president of the European Commission, told Flemish newspaper, whatever the name of this Flemish newspaper. Hitler also lost the war in late 1943, but the war lasted 2 more years, he said. Well, at least he finally admits that Hitler lost the war in the Eastern Front, because at that time there was nowhere near any kind of allies in the Western Europe. But hey, but look at basically the biography of Mr. Timmermans. And this is just very typical. I specifically point this out constantly that, just look at these guys. He was born in 1961, he attended the school, then some school in Rome, he attended some kind of college in Haarlem where he settled. He entered some university in Nijmegen, where he graduated with MA degree in French literature. In 1984, he also enrolled at another university where he studied European law, French literature and history. So as you can see yourself, he also attended for 1 year the Dutch Military Intelligence and Security Service as a Russian prisoner of war interrogator. So the guy, as you can see yourself, has a very, very serious, I'm being facetious, of course, the experience. But yeah, that's what they are. That's who the primarily people who run both the United States, be that Mr. Kagan or Ms. This Timmerman. These are all the humanities dumbed down, basically imbeciles who will know how to command a squad, or let alone platoon, and how the basically real military, real economy, real warfare works. So, but what do I know, really, indeed? I'm nobody. I never graduated, thank God, any Ivy League humanities faculty or the department, and thank God for that. But obviously we can always take a look when we speak about how this is isolated. We can speak to people who actually do have good education, who have good background, who have good experience, especially in diplomacy, for example. And as I always say, Mr. Hadra Kumar, Dr. Hadra Kumar, former Indian diplomat, he is not mincing words. Yesterday he just comes out like this, and on December 25th, on the Christmas day, says Ukraine war tolls death knell for NATO. And this is what was this all about special military operation, which is everybody in the West right now, especially in the media and political circles, try to drown in the minutia of the war which is happening right now. And here was what Mr. Hadra Kumar says. If you look attentively, the whole point is that Western commentariat largely forgets that Russia's core agenda is not about territorial conquest, much as Ukraine is vital to Russian interests, but about NATO expansion. And that has not changed. But again, you know what? I have to evidently work 24/7, constantly to reminding people what is this all about. And Ukraine is, however important and large, is just one of the fronts of the war. And here is what Mr. Hadra Kumar says. Putin has a phenomenal memory and would have been alluding to Biden's careful choice of William Burns as his CIA chief. Burns was Moscow embassy point person for Chechnya in 1990s. Putin has now ordered a nationwide campaign to root out the vast tentacles that the US intelligence planted on Russian soil for internal subversion. And that's what I'm constantly saying, and people still don't get it, but you can constantly stress it. And that also fits quite well with what many people started to ask me, and asking me to do the commentary on the Russia's expansion of military. And as I already stated, the United States cannot find conventional war in Europe against Russia and win. In fact, it cannot even draw. It will sustain catastrophic losses. And it will be the end of it. And knowing that the United States is extremely nuclear weapons biased nation, that will escalate most likely by the United States to the nuclear threshold. Russians obviously want to avoid this, and they're trying to do everything they can, which you can also follow through with always misreported in the Western media, because they lied. This is what the only thing, that's the degrees they are awarded in their journalism schools. But this is what Russians and top people from Russia, they say constantly, that we will do everything to avoid nuclear confrontation, because that will be the end of it, and nobody needs listen, I have my vested interest in this. I live in the west coast of the United States. I don't want to be washed out by a Poseidon tsunami, or have our city blown out by couple megatons, so that's it about basically Russians constantly insisting and stating this, which is true. But here's what we need to keep in mind after we review all those things, and here I want to stress basically why I have very low expectations for, if you wish, this whole media political class in the combined West, both Europe and the United States, and why it looks grim in terms of the basically expecting any kind of rational response. Now we can say it, and I've been already on record many times on this, they are that incompetent. from the top bottom, be that political advocacy, political consultancy, or military and operations and economy and what have you. They are that incompetent. And they are especially incompetent, of course, in war and real history of Russia. That is why they miscalculate constantly. When you have caricature to go on, you know what, yeah, you're not going to make good decisions and you're going to get yourself into the traps. And that's what happened with the United States. And now even there is this, I constantly, when I speak about him, I spoke about him like, what, 2 times already? This is probably the third. There is this clown in the US media, Mr. David X, who just writes about, as he says, you know, planes, tanks, and what have you. So the guy is the comic painter, comic artist, you know, and he was hit by improvised explosive device in Afghanistan when he was visiting there with troops, and evidently that also reduced his intellectual capabilities. But even this clown, he had to admit, when we speak about what is going on really in Ukraine, for example, or why things happening this way or the other, no matter how the Western media try to spin something, even the such ignorant and totally illiterate people in military like this guy, speaking into this rag at Forbes, he has to admit that Russia electronic warfare troops knocked out 90% of Ukraine's drones. And he obviously starts with the Russian military failures in Russia's wider war on Ukraine almost are too numerous to list. Well, he will know shit from Shinola because he never commanded in his life, as I already stated, even one person. But even this clown has to admit that, and in no less Forbes, mainstream BS spreader, basically, that Russia is doing quite well in terms of its electronic warfare, and there are other signs that Russia is doing quite well, especially when it comes down to Starlink, for example, and shutting down those communications. But as I already stated, even if this fanboy continues to speak about this and has to admit it, so there's something interesting is happening. And he writes, even this guy writes about it, that basically everything what was told pretty much about this, about Russia failing here, there, and wherever, you know, and it's actually primarily BS. Things work fine. Obviously, we have to keep in mind that there will be always tactical issues. There will be always some mistakes, especially on the tactical level, especially on the level of some specific units or subunits. It is normal. War is always filled with mistakes of all kinds of people, including commanders of some kind of units, not formations. But generally, in terms of when we speak about the operational level, let alone strategic one, war it proceeds exactly as intended, and that we will have to discuss it more down the road. But now people say, oh my gosh, you know, there's not only 300,000 people basically mobilized, which were primarily people with, overwhelmingly actually, people with the armed service experience, and some of them with very many actually with combat experience. But now Putin and collective Putin, if you wish, they talk about the expanding of the Russian army to ground forces and general armed forces to 1.5 million people, and we have to keep in mind that we're talking about at least 5 new divisions, which are motor rifle, and even the naval infantry divisions. Yeah, even in Soviet times, naval infantry, of which I also have the background, which are Marines, they were basically traditionally formed into the brigade-sized forces. There were brigades, separate brigade, for example, of the Black Sea fleet, for the Baltic fleet, for Northern and Pacific fleets. Then, of course, Caspian Flotilla had a separate independent regiment. But now, evidently, everything will be basically grown into the divisions. And we are talking about also the artillery divisions with the heavy artillery and very high caliber, above 155 millimeter caliber, basically. Well, in Russia it's 152 millimeters. we're looking at a vast expansion, and this has nothing to do with Ukraine, obviously. And when people begin to look at this, and you can see now even the Armata 1st Battalion being basically developing combat cohesion on the ranges in Russia to be shipped, I think so, they will be shipped to the front in Ukraine or whatever is former Ukraine. So you look at this, this is not about Ukraine, and Russia already has more than enough forces to basically just wipe out whatever is left, but it's obviously up to Putin or collective Putin and general staff to decide how the campaign proceeds. But when you look at this, it's about NATO, guys, and it's about NATO especially through the basically all those tabakis, you know, those jackals from the Baltic states. There is a Poland issue. So if you look at this attentively and you begin to understand that, yeah, even if Finland Sweden decide to go and join NATO, obviously you need to have a response, and that response obviously means the expansion of the Russian military, which was actually, and I am on the record, still, while very capable force, I mean, everybody wanted to have it a little bit larger, unlike it was the case when we had the so-called Russia had the liberal reformers trying to optimize, quote-unquote, Russian armed forces, but obviously which was saved, especially with coming of Vladimir Putin to power, early 2000s, and the process of the real reformation and rearmament has commenced. So, and we have this, but, people want me to comment on, for example, specific, what's gonna happen if we have more tanks. Well, it's obvious. You're gonna get not only first tanks, first guards tank army, you'll get probably second tank army. You'll get another, you know, shock, you know, high impact units capable of fighting not only in Ukraine, but in Poland if need be, and deep into NATO territory if NATO doesn't get the message. But I think so NATO was kind of getting the message, and so here we have to look at something which you wouldn't expect. And when people say, about basically expansion of Russian military, what about economically wise? Well, let me demonstrate something which anybody and any kind of open source intelligence person who has half brain or IQ above room temperature will notice immediately, will point out to this situation. And here it is. Let me show you. You might not know this. But basically, about 3 days ago, Russia floated yet another submarine of the new class, Project 677 Lada class, which was long in gestation, and it was a very kind of thorny way to develop that type of submarines, because first 3 hulls are already afloat. This one is, the latest one was Veliki Luki submarine, and it's already on the sea trials, and another 2 hulls are already under construction, and those will be with the air independent propulsion. And this fact, you say, so what's the big deal? There's yet another submarine. Let me explain how important it is and how it plays extremely effectively in giving their full understanding of the Russia's economic capabilities, and to give you basically the reason, an explanation of the reason why I'm constantly screaming, so to speak. You know, if you can consider this me speaking to you in this video and writing books and articles and having my blog about constantly warning the United States and West that they don't know what they are getting into. They do not understand what they got themselves. Of course, when you have the idiots like this Dutch guy, or, you know, you have Robert Kagan, who have no clue what they're talking about, and probably, you know, they never served a day in the uniform except for this Dutch guy. So, and when you see and read those statements, they are clueless, really. The only thing they can do is PR. Everything about what they do is PR. And here it is. As you all know, the latest version of the America's U.S. Navy submarine force, it's of course Virginia-class SSN, nuclear-powered submarines, very good submarines, obviously. The platforms are excellent. And so United States manufactured about 11 of them in the last 12 years, I believe. So don't quote me on this, but I think so I'm in ballpark correct here. So, and it was basically they wanted to do the two submarines per year, but obviously it's never worked out as they planned. But still, it's United States Navy right now has 22 of those excellent subs. Some of them are already kind of not new, but still they are good submarines and they are future, so to speak, of the United States Navy and the submarine force. And when you look at this, you add there those older Los Angeles class. Many of them are obviously nearing obsolescence. So this is your fast attack or multi-purpose a nuclear powered submarine or submarine component of the United States Navy. So add here 14 Ohio class strategic missile submarines, which most of them are old subs. 4 of them have been converted for the carriers of the Tomahawk missiles, and 4 of them. So there you go. So we have what? I don't know, 65 or something like that, subs altogether. Obviously, strategic missile submarines is the separate issue, but let me show you something which obviously people miss sometimes, and when I constantly say that, hey, you need to look at this, and that gives you some basically idea about what is happening. Russia operates, unlike the United States, both diesel or SSK submarines and nuclear powered submarines component. And if you look attentively just on the nuclear-powered submarine component by Russia, Russia produced since 2011 6 newest strategic missile, state-of-the-art strategic missile submarines. She also floated out 4 newest Yasin-class Project 885 SSGNs. So altogether we're looking, wow, 10 submarines in basically what amounts to 10 years. Not too bad, right? So Russia obviously operates other type of the nuclear submarines, which are older ones, they're being updated, but then we have this. Unlike the United States, Russia operates a superb diesel submarine component, which is excellent both for littoral and remote sea zone, and they're extremely silent, and also they carry, as you might have guessed it already, not just torpedoes, but cruise missiles such as 3M14 caliber or 3M54, which is the anti-shipping missile. When look at this, I compiled for you the table of just those SSKs, and if you can take a look at this, and if you start counting since commissioned in 2014, which is what, we have 2023 coming, so 9 years, and what is coming up until 2027. So look what we have. We have actually, within 13 years, actually, Russia will commission or commissioned already 22 nuclear non-nuclear state-of-the-art diesel submarines, in addition to already floating 10 brand new nuclear subs. So what are we looking at? We're looking at 32 state-of-the-art submarines, which actually Russia is out producing the United States. And again, Russian diesel subs, they can carry out the task of defense of littoral against any type of the submarine, including the most advanced American nuclear-powered submarines. And right now, right this very moment, we have, let's calculate, 1, 2, 3, 4, so 10 here and 3 here. 13 already are afloat. And these are brand new ones. Don't forget, Russia still operates a massive, older Kilo class Project 877 Varshavyanka submarine. So you're looking at a massive, massive submarine force, much of it extremely advanced and modern. And that gives you, so this is the country which was what, had the economy torn to pieces or whatever, shredded to pieces, how Mr. Obama stated. And these are just submarines. And then you begin to look at the production of other war material, including the air defense systems. And again, in terms of air defense systems, United States is not even competitor. I already explained it, and Patriot, if ever makes it to Ukraine, is not going to last for a long time. But I'm just saying that the massive production is there, yet if you look at Russian economic activity, like regular, commercial, civilian, everyday activity, everything happens as if nothing happened. Russia is doing just fine. I mean, there are some issues of losing some brands, but yeah, just be realistic. I mean, just go and visit Vladivostok, Moscow, St. Petersburg, Yekaterinburg, Perm, whatever, and yes, see for yourself. So Russians doing okay. I mean, they could have been doing better, obviously, but they're doing okay. And when you look at this is begins to kind of, give you an idea of what is going on. And then, of course, you have this thing, which is, of course, Russia continues to produce not only modernized Tu-160 AMs. She is now producing, and look at the date, it's December 19, 2022. She's producing now two Tu-160 M2s, which are brand new, absolutely redesigned platforms. And you begin to count this, and, you have to ask yourself, I mean, how is this even possible when you look at this massive military production and massive military expansion, including now the obviously increase of the Russian ground forces and air defense forces and obviously air forces. Don't forget, some people even 2 years ago they were saying that the Su-57 is just the showpiece. Well, guess what? They fly in combat missions and they are in serial production right now. So when you look at this, you basically making the case that, you know what, Mr. Kagan or whatever, Mr. in European Parliament with the Dutch dude and people like that, you better start learning the real thing. Stop inventing this bullshit about democracy. Stop inventing this neocon, basically perverted view of the world, which is based on caricature, because those people are extremely, extremely ambitious. They are extremely not smart, and they believe that what they imagine is how world operates. It doesn't operate like this, and this is just some of the demonstration of what is happening in terms of the military when Russia is out producing the United States in terms of military material and equipment, and she will continue to do so up to the point that, and again, you have to understand, Russia doesn't need to produce, for example, 13 billion worth of aircraft carrier, because Russia has weapon systems which sink them. But this is difficult to explain to people who do not study real war, do not study mathematics. And just to demonstrate to you, we have been talking about this many times. There's the new kind of fashion things. It's RUSI, it's Royal United Service Institute from Great Britain. And it's supposedly a military think tank which gives all those, explanations of what is the warfare is. There are a bunch of the people from Sandhurst who, graduated there, those, British people, military people, and all kinds of other people who study. I don't know what they study. I really doubt they study real war. And again, as I already stated, you cannot study the real war if you base it on caricature and the fake data. But that's what they do. And here it is, just to show you that this is another kind of fad. This is another fashion thing, trend, let's refer to Rusi, because British, as we all know, whose army can fit easily, whole one, including Navy, fit in the Wembley Stadium, and gonna be probably some free space left. And of course, it cannot operate its own aircraft carriers, with the Prince of Wales spending more time in dock than in the sea. So here is the thing which I wanted to really give you explanation why those people in Rusi are really just funny, and this is like ridiculous. This is what Rusi writes about, for example, Yasin class, Yasin M, Project 885, nuclear-powered submarines, and they are talking about, granted, they do some more or less, open source work explaining why the AM modernized hulls of the Yasin class submarines differ from the original Severodvinsk, because obviously they're going to be carrying less of the personnel, they're going to be carrying zircons and things of this nature, and it goes on, and it seems like, okay, yeah, sure, this seems reasonable enough. They're talking about things which are there, which you can confirm. And this is written by the main guy, who is Dr. Siddharth Kaushal, research fellow, Sea Power. I'll give you immediately the clue. who is this guy? The guy is economist, and he graduated London School of Economics and has the degree in political science too, I believe. So we'll talk about it. But look at this. And then when you seems like, oh yeah, there are all those wonderful terms, funny, things which supposedly betrayed in you, like the military professionals who write about this. And then they create this thing. And this was written basically last year, exactly one year ago. Look at this. They talk about the salvo and why basically submarines are, while they're really good, there are issues with the targeting. And look what they write. And this is immediately the thing. First, professionals, when talk about queuing, they talk about targeting, okay? And here it is. Here he talk about that while definitely Yasins and others, have all those, wonderful weapons, very advanced and things like that, but how they going to use them against the NATO, for example, forces? Here it is. They talk about the fact that basically within this rubric, Russia's Legenda and Selena Elint and Radar satellites would have provided the rough locations of vessel of Oscar class. They talk about how it was done in 80s. The latter would then fire a salvo of P-700 missiles, with some of the missiles flying at the high altitude to act as spotters for the remainder, which would follow safer low altitude trajectories. And here they give this. Given the imprecision of electronic intelligence data, this method requires a large number of missiles to be fired to ensure that the area in which the target might be located can be swept by the spotters' missiles' active seekers. You may say that, okay, there's nothing wrong, which they say there. No, there's nothing wrong. It's correct. You need... I don't know why they although concentrated on Legenda and Selena. Selena, actually, the name of the satellites. When Russia already has the Liana, which is fully operational, and we don't know how many active radar satellites are there, at least 2 or 3, and we have already a electronic intelligence component there, and obviously, yeah, the missiles are called shoot and forget for a reason. You shoot and forget after you introduced and loaded the flight task, so to speak. They're basically targeting data, and targeting data is always, azimuth distance or bearing distance or range or geographic coordinates. But if you look, and you have to remember from my former, some of the videos I did previously, you could see yourself the radar picture, which was provided by those old, allegedly non-operational anymore, Legenda satellites, and you know what, they were providing excellent radar picture. And as general staff, Russian general staff, 2 years made basically disclosure that even during the 1982 Falkland War, Soviet Navy knew every single target where it was, and they were receiving targeting non-stop. So today, Liana is much more advanced, and there are very many more other assets which work for the basically targeting for those types of submarines and naval ships which carry those very long range and very fast anti-shipping missiles. So it will not be the problem to operate those things like this. And that is why you begin to ask a question. But they were launching salvos not because of that. While he speaks about the width, so to speak, of the sweep of the active radar seeker in the missiles, if you get them in front, it's very easy to calculate. I already once showed you how it is calculated. When even for the missile like caliber 3M54, which has a relatively moderate size or basically range of the sweep of the 40 kilometers, and the angles of both sides of the diametrical plane of the missile 45 degrees, which is roughly 90 degrees. And the issue here is you do not shoot salvos because of that. You shoot salvos because you need to use the salvo model. You need to use the Salva model because you will encounter countermeasures like air defense of the battle group or something, and you have to achieve the leaker. So you assume, well, you not assume. I already showed you many times. This is classic non-augmented, augmented and expanded, embellished Salva equations are much more complex than that. But the fact is, you should Salva because you need to overcome, oversaturate air defense, and you have to leak through it, literally. That's why you have to create the leaker problem and for the defending side, and that is why obviously the reason which they give as the main reason is not actually the main reason. And this is the thing which immediately tells you, you know what, guys, how you even can come up with something when you are not aware even about the Salva interaction and issues of the air defense of the battle groups. But here it is. This is the Royal Institute main thing, and they, write those papers which is basically amounts to the misinforming people about the nature of the modern, especially missile exchange warfare. And that's what we have. And this is Russia, which is now so fashionable to, quote, but again, professional who has any clue about the warfare, they will immediately see that what amount of spin, and actually at least they say something which actually is legitimate. But most of the time when you listen to those military specialists from Great Britain, from United States, or what have you, 99% of them are people who have no clue what they're talking about. Even if they have 4-star generals, they're mostly into PR, like Ben Hodges, who has no clue what he's talking about. The guy doesn't know what real war is. He's a boy compared to Russian generals who actually won campaign after campaign, war after war, from Chechnya to Syria to what have you. And here we have the people who don't understand even that basically U.S. Army force structure is not designed to fight real war. It's not designed to fight advanced, very advanced and very tough and very powerful military. So, but that's what we have today, and it continues on and on and on, and this is what I needed to tell you about. And when you begin to look at this whole situation with expansion of Russian military, which is ongoing, and I speak to you, you have to understand, Russia is preparing this in case she needs to fight whole of NATO, and believe me, she will have the forces to basically achieve the main truism of war written by our Karl von Clausewitz, that the main object of war is to compel the enemy to do our will. And when I speak about this, including this wonderful Indian diplomat and other people, they don't understand. Russia is in Ukraine not to do territorial conquest. Obviously, Russia will complete and wipe out the remaining Ukrainian forces from the remainder of the Zaporozhye Oblast, and will liberate the Donetsk, the remainder of Donetsk and Kherson Oblast. But as already stated, Russia's task is not to go and, just conquest of Ukraine as the territory. It's a separate issue which needs to be discussed. No, Russia is in the business of demilitarization. And now demilitarization happens not only for the VSU, which we're already talking about, the probably third, not even second iteration of the armed forces of Ukraine. We are talking about Russia demilitarizing NATO. And this is just basically in the beginning of this. And we will be talking about more and about force correlation once Russia completes her expansion of those forces. But at least I gave you a primer on this issue today. And this is what I needed to talk to you. And as always, guys, those who like what I do, please subscribe to my channel. And those who can afford, please support me on Patreon and buy me coffee, what have you, guys. And I hope you had a wonderful Christmas day. And so what can I say? Have a nice, basically, rest of the week. And I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.